Hello and welcome. Ukrainian armed forces achieve additional successes close to Bakhmut and in the south. We have a detailed Ukrainian analysis from a Ukrainian officer why the advance in the south has been so slow. Robotine has now been declared liberated, and finally we have the expectation for Ukraine to receive another 100 MBTs. This and more in the situational picture. Fighting obviously continues along the whole front line. We start in the northeast of Kupiansk. The Russians continue attacking here, but don't have much to show for anymore. While they have advanced somewhat west of Persho-Travneve, the offensive seems to stall at this point and doesn't advance further. Fighting is also continuing close to Novoselivske here, and in the Sherebets bridgehead we also have fighting reported from Torske, Ukrainian attacks in the direction of Crimea, as well as here in the Serebryanske forests. I cannot confirm any change in territory. Fighting is also continuing along the Bakhmut area from Vesele to Orehovo, Vasilivka, down to Berchivka and Yahidne. I cannot confirm any change in territory. The Ukrainians have had some minor success, though, south of Andrivka. They were advancing and pushing the Russians somewhat back. Andrivka at that point still seems to be in Russian hand, but by now they are getting flanked from the north and from the south, so the retreat should come within a few days at least, unless Russian counterattacks manage to improve the situation again. Further south, fighting continues around Avdiivka, Marinka, also no change in territory. When we go to the area of Velika Novosilka, where the oblasts of Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia meet, we have the Ukrainians claim that from Urushaine they had advances south, and in the area of Staromayorsk they had some successes. I cannot exactly localize where they were supposed to be. I think they probably advanced along that tree line here, which they were trying over the past few days and where they had some successes. But overall, I cannot confirm that there was any significant change in territory here. So while the Ukrainians claim that, I do not have visual evidence, or I have a Russian admission to some successes. It's a little bit different here south of Orikhiv. The Ukrainians are pushing south, while the Russians are still claiming that Robotine is still contested. Now the Ukrainians show that it's liberated, and we do not have any evidence of the Russians still being in Robotine for roughly a week. Now they are very close to it. They fly over it with drones, they shell it, they strike it with bombs, but the last Russian soldier has been spotted in Robotine roughly a week ago, so Robotine seems to be liberated. By now there seems to be little doubt left. The Ukrainians report successes here in Robotine in the direction of Verbove and in the area south, between the two, south in this direction. This pro-Ukrainian map, though, is a lot more pessimistic than Riba, a Russian mill blogger, and let me turn off my camera here. When we see the situation here, we see that this is Robotine and this is Verbove, and we basically have 80% of the distance between the two already recaptured by the Ukrainians, already a liberated territory. And if we go back to the map here, this shows that it is far more pessimistic than before. The Ukrainians should be far closer in this area to the Russian positions. They are now reaching the defensive lines here by the Russians. This is called by some the second defensive line. I guess that's a question of definition. I guess there have been some north of it, you could call it this, but this is the first continuous defensive line in this area. So I think it would be a euphemism to call this the second fortification line, as this is the first ongoing one. Nevertheless, when we look at the situation here, the Ukrainians are pushing south here, but they are very slow at it. The offensive more or less started in June, and it's more or less 3 months ago, and this is all they have achieved. So why were they so slow? We have a Ukrainian officer here. Now, Tatarigami is also Ukrainian, but he's just translating it to English what Alexander Solonko said, and he's basically, I'm going to summarize it for you, and I'm going to post the link for you in the description in case you want to read it yourself. But basically he said that everything is surveilled. They have surveillance everywhere. The Russians do see any units that start to build up for an attack and already can start shelling it. The artillery has has a knowledge of all the positions. So in case they want to shell a certain position, they already know how to what elevation, what side picture, etc. What side, how to aim the guns, which increases the hit ratio right from the first shot. They also, the fortifications they've built are mutually supportive with automatic grenade launchers, ATGMs, so anti-tank guided missiles, and heavy machine guns. All of those are supportive with each other, and the fortifications are in depth. Some of them are connected even with tunnels, and what is not fortified, where there are no trenches, there are mines. So either anything in this area, the Ukrainians either have the choice of Russian positions. By the way, also every single tree line, according to him, has has trenches in it. So the Ukrainians either have the choice of Russian positions or Russian minefields. There's nothing in between, according to him. Even in the areas they already liberated, there are still massive pollution with mines. Mines are still spread around massively in this area, and whenever the Russians shell them, mines start blowing up. Tripwires are being are causing new explosions. Fires that are started with artillery fire make new mines explode. The situation overall is really problematic, and while the Ukrainian sappers are trying to, or I think sappers in English, are trying to demine the area, it remains a significant problem. He's saying that while there have been clearly been mistakes in the usage of the heavy equipment initially, it is mainly used to save lives because material can be replaced, human lives cannot. He personally knows someone who has been hit twice inside of a Bradley and managed to walk away from it. And while equipment gets destroyed, it saves lives, and he insists that even heavily damaged equipment is being salvaged and tried to be repaired or at least be used for spares. He's also saying that the Russians use for their ATGMs positions, they use cameras. So to identify targets earlier than it would be possible from their own positions, to have a better overview, something that probably no military in the West has trained and prepared for in the past. And when this allows them to be much more efficient with their ATGM crews, and if something is spotted and the ATGMs hit it, the Air Force and the artillery also pound it to destroy everything, which makes the situation much, much harder. The Russians, according to him, are also basically chasing and hunting down medevac troops, both positions where I guess the wounded are being cared for, as well as vehicles that are used to move them. We've seen some videos in the past of FPV drones, for instance, attacking Ukrainians on carrying a stretcher with a wounded person. That should be a clear war crime, even if the carriers do not carry the Red Cross sign. He is saying that it's being done in a massive scale and the Russians are doing it on purpose. The biggest issue for them are the bombs. So though we have a video here of a Ukrainian unit that has just survived an airstrike, this is a bomb that hit right in front of it, and you can see for how long debris is still falling down when the Ukrainians gather themselves and move away from it. This is all coming down from one bomb, which is one of the most fearsome items in the Russian inventory. The air reconnaissance by the Russians is highly effective, he's saying, and if the Russians see something, whole swarms of Lancets are being used, and the Air Force is using the KABs, the guided bombs that they are using to strike it, which makes it even more difficult. The Russians also have prepared fire positions for their tanks close to cover, so the Russians can move in their tanks under the cover of tree lines, for instance. Then they pop up, empty their magazines by shooting along the front line and withdraw, showing us that the classic tank-on-tank combat that a lot of people might have expected is highly unlikely if The Russians are using theirs more or less as a mobile artillery and not to actually do mechanized warfare with attacks with their tanks. This is a situation that obviously makes it much more difficult, but with the Ukrainians slowly advancing, we have no clear view about the attrition rates from both sides, how far the Ukrainians will have been able to whittle down the Russians at that point. We will just have to see, but we see that they are slowly gaining ground and continuously gaining ground, and we'll have to watch how far they can get. At least there seems to be some good news. This is a Greek magazine that is a flight magazine, and they say the exclusive, obviously, that means that a lot of confirmation is still not here. According to them, Germany, the German government has offered Greece that Greece should hand over 100 of their Leopard 1 A5 to the Ukrainians in exchange for 96 Leopard 1s that are currently held by Switzerland. RUAG has bought them from Italy, and they refuse to sell them on for Rheinmetall for further sale for them to give it to Ukraine because of the neutrality of Switzerland. But this way, by giving them to Greece, which is not at war, while Greece gives the equal number to Ukraine, it would obviously not break Swiss laws, and Greece at the same time, as they are saying here, would get better tanks than they had before, as they have done in the past, where they exchanged BMP-1s for German Marders in the Ringtausch scheme as well. We'll have to see how much of this is true, but obviously 100 new tanks would be a big advantage. And as we've just talked about, the usage of tanks in many ways more or less like an assault gun, somewhat armored, but usually far behind the front line, often at least to shoot precisely at positions, but from a distance. At that point, it doesn't need to be a highly modern one, as long as the optics and the gun are good enough, and there the Leopard 1 would do its job probably close to as well as any more modern tank could do here. We'll have to see how much of this is true, and if you don't want to miss that, then I would like to invite you to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. If you like this situational picture, please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps with the algorithm, and leave a comment what you think about the Ringtausch scheme and what you think how far the Ukrainians might advance further south in this counteroffensive. That's already it from me for now. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting it. That's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.